Late that night in Luca Morti's office, the only sound was my own breathing. I was about to steal from the most dangerous man in the city. My brother's life depended on it. I'd spent weeks watching him, memorizing his routines. Now I was kneeling in front of his personal safe. My hands were steady. They had to be. The first code I tried did nothing, just a red light. My stomach tightened. The second code made the safe hum, but the door stayed shut. I could hear the clock on his desk ticking. Each second felt like a punch. I couldn't fail, not with Owen's safety on the line, so I started the manual override. I pressed a stethoscope to the cold metal and listened for the clicks. A drop of sweat ran down my temple. The floor was hard under my knees, but each tiny sound brought me closer. My fingers moved on their own with a precision I didn't know I had. Then I felt it. A solid thunk through the dial. The safe door opened with a quiet hiss. Inside, I saw it immediately. The black ledger, I grabbed it. The book was heavy. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. For a second, I felt pure relief. My vision actually blurred. That's when I heard the soft click of the office door closing behind me. I turned slow, the ledger held tight to my chest. Luca Morti stood there. He'd come in without a sound. He looked from my face to the book in my arms. He didn't look angry at first. He just looked. Tired, deeply tired. He ran a hand over his mouth like a man carrying a weight he couldn't name. Then his eyes met mine and the whole room went cold. I could deal with the anger. But that tired look, that was different. The ledger felt like a block of ice in my hands. I didn't turn around again. I knew he was there. I could smell his cologne, something dark and clean. He moved without a sound and took the book from my grip. His fingers brushed mine. They were warm. I flinched. "Look at me," he said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the whole room. I turned. He had a gun on his hip. There was blood on his hands. I made myself look up into his gray eyes. They were tired, I saw that now. The lines around them were deep. He put the ledger on his desk. It landed with a soft thud. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. "You are a very smart woman, Alara Vance," he said. He walked to the window, his back to me. The city lights made a grid of gold on the glass. "And you are in a very stupid situation." He turned to face me. "Silas Croft told you which safe to crack. He gave you the codes." My breath caught. That was wrong. Owen got the codes. Luca saw my confusion. A flicker of something that wasn't anger passed over his face. It looked almost like pity. "Your brother is a good man," Luca said. "He is also a desperate one. Croft owns his debt. He used it to own you." The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. Owen would never. But the sick feeling in my gut said he would. For our dad, for me. Luca came closer. He took my wrist. His grip was firm, but it wasn't cruel. His thumb pressed right against my pulse. "Croft doesn't want the ledger," he said, his voice low. "He wants a war. Your body, found with my property, is the match." He let go of my wrist. He ran a hand through his hair. The silver at his temples caught the light. "You have two choices. You can walk out that door. Croft's men are downstairs. They will take you." He paused, his eyes locked on mine. "Or you can stay here, with me." The fact that my own brother might have set me up, that wasn't going away. I could still taste the fear, metallic and sharp. Luca walked over to a cabinet by the window. He opened it and came back with a small metal box marked with a red cross. He put it on the desk between us. He looked at my hands resting on the wood. I followed his look. There was a thin, red cut across my knuckle. I must have scraped it on the safe's lock. I hadn't even felt it. "Let me see," he said. His voice was low. It wasn't a request. I hesitated. My whole body felt stiff. I made myself lift my hand. He didn't take it. He just looked. His own hands, I noticed, were very clean. His nails were trimmed straight across. He opened the box and took out an antiseptic wipe. "This will sting." He tore the packet open. The smell of alcohol filled the space between us. He held the wipe, waiting. I turned my hand over, offering the cut. He was careful. His fingers barely touched my skin. He cleaned the cut with slow, precise wipes. His head was bent in concentration. For a moment, he didn't look like a crime boss. He looked like a man mending a watch. "You didn't flinch," he said. He didn't look up from his work. "I was bracing for worse," I said. The words came out flat. He paused. The wipe stopped moving on my skin. His shoulders dropped just for a second. "I know what you think I am." He finally looked up. His gray eyes weren't hard now. They were just tired. He reached for a bandage. "I have to be that man most hours of the day. It doesn't mean I enjoy causing pain." He said it quietly, like he was talking to himself. It felt too honest for this room. He smoothed the bandage over my knuckle. His thumb pressed the adhesive down. He was close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. I felt the warmth of his hand near mine. He didn't pull away. I didn't pull my hand back. The air in the office felt thick and still. I held my breath without meaning to. He finished and let his hand rest beside mine on the desk. Our little fingers were almost touching. He looked at our hands there on the dark wood. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. He just stayed there, quiet and still, for one long moment. The rest made sense. What he had been about to say before he stopped himself didn't. Real quick, if you're here for a mafia boss who's more complicated than he seems, hit subscribe. You're gonna want to hear how this ends. The ghost of Luca's careful bandage still tingled across my palm. Days later, I stood before the bank of monitors in the apartment. Their blue glow painted the stale air. Luca stood behind my chair, close enough for me to feel the heat from his body. He pointed at a frozen image of a warehouse dock. "Craftsmen," he said. His voice was flat. "Show me what you see." I forced myself to look at the screen. My brother's face flashed in my mind. I felt sick. "I see 4 guards," I said. My voice sounded thin. 2 at the main door, 1 patrolling the north fence line, 1 stationary at the south corner. "Basic," Luca said. He leaned forward to tap the next screen. His sleeve brushed my shoulder. I flinched. The way he'd looked at me just then wasn't about the threat. I didn't know what to do with that. He pulled back. "Watch the next 6 hours, compressed." The footage sped up. Men became blurs of dark suits against gray concrete. I watched until my eyes burned. Luca was a silent statue at my back, then I saw it. "Stop," I said. He paused the feed. "The south corner guard. He leaves his post every 93 minutes. He walks to the east wall for a smoke. It takes 4 minutes." Luca was quiet for a long time. I could hear his steady breathing over the hum of the computers. When he spoke, his tone was different. Less like a teacher, more like a man listening. "Why does that matter?" "Because the camera on the east wall is fixed," I said. My heart beat hard. I pointed at the screen. "See the blind spot? Right there by the fire door. For 4 minutes, no one sees it." He moved then, coming around to stand beside me. He looked at the screen, not at me. His fingers, usually so still, drummed once on the desk. It was a tiny crack, a sign of a working mind. "And the patrol from the north." "He never checks the south corner during that shift change," I said. The pieces locked together. "They're on different rotation schedules. They don't talk to each other. It's a gap." Luca turned his head. His gray eyes found mine. The sharp lines of his face were softened by the monitor's light. "You found a seam," he said. It wasn't praise, it was a fact, but it felt like oxygen. Then his encrypted phone buzzed on his belt. He pulled it out and read the message. His whole body went still. The softness vanished. He looked from the phone to me, his expression unreadable. "Your brother," he said slowly. "He just accessed the shell company files from his phone." The room tilted. Owen had the codes. Owen was safe in the safe house. The files were here, in Luca's safe. My breath stopped. The answer to whether my brother's hand had truly been the one to betray me was now a live wire in the room. One thing kept pulling at me: why my brother was using his phone from the safe house. The ache in my jaw from grinding my teeth all afternoon was a persistent, dull throb. In the dim, amber light of the back room, the scent of cigar smoke and expensive bourbon clung to the drapes. I stood in the shadow of a tall bookcase, my instructions clear. I was to watch Luca Morty, my captor and now protector, meet with Silas Croft. I was not to make a sound. Silas Croft, a rival boss with a round face, arrived with a thin smile. He smoothed his silk tie as he sat. "Your usual spot, Luca. How predictable." Luca, seated across from him, didn't move. His gray eyes were fixed on Croft. The only sign of tension was the way his index finger tapped once, slowly, on the arm of his leather chair. I remembered that tap from his study. It meant he was thinking 10 steps ahead. "You're encroaching on my docs," Croft said, his voice still friendly. "My associates are nervous. They need reassurance." Luca poured himself a glass of water. He didn't offer one to Croft. "Your associates should look to their own books." "I hear the auditors are getting curious." Croft's smile vanished. He leaned forward. "I also hear you had a breach. Something valuable went missing. I want it found, or I'll find the thief myself." He let the threat hang in the quiet room. "Thieves are a dime a dozen," Luca said. His voice was flat. "You should worry about your own problems." Croft's eyes, a cold blue, narrowed. "My only problem is a missing ledger, and the man who can lead me to it, Owen Vance, he's in deep, Luca. Medical debt is a powerful leash." My blood went cold. Owen, This was the threat Luca had stopped himself from telling me. My chest tightened. I had to lock my knees to stay upright. Luca stood up. The meeting was over. Stay away from Owen Vance. The command in his voice was absolute. Croft stood too, his deceptively soft hands resting on the table. Or what? You'll start a war you can't win. Luca didn't answer. He just looked at Croft until the other man looked away first. Croft left without another word. Luca stayed by the table for a long moment. He didn't look at me. He just stared at his own reflection in the dark window. His shoulders were a straight, hard line, but his head was bowed slightly, like a man listening for a distant alarm. Owen's name had made my blood go cold, and that feeling wouldn't leave. My throat still held the dry knot that had formed during Croft's threat. The harsh kitchen light glinted off the kettle. I heard Luca's quiet footsteps behind me. He stood in the doorway, his tie loose and his jacket gone. He looked tired. I said I was making tea. I asked if he wanted some. He shook his head. He went to the cabinet and took down a bottle of whiskey and a single glass. He poured the drink and leaned against the counter. He was close enough that I could see the old scar along his jaw. He stared into the amber liquid and didn't move for a long time. I watched his hand around the glass. His fingers were perfectly still. That stillness was worse than any pacing. It meant the weight was too much to shift. My father built this, he said finally. His voice was low and rough. Every brick. He told me it was a crown. He never said it was a cage. He took a slow drink. He did not look at me. You asked about your brother's phone. The safe house line is secure. My men check it. He paused. But the shell company files he pulled were on a server only I can access from this apartment. He turned his head. His gray eyes were fixed on a point past me. He used my terminal from in here while I was dealing with Croft. The air left my lungs. Owen was here. In this apartment. The cash, the gun, the scars, none of it was normal, but my brother had walked right into the heart of it. For me, Luca's silence was a physical pressure. I was supposed to be finding leverage. Instead, I asked a question I hadn't planned. Is it ever quiet? He looked at me then, really looked. His controlled expression softened at the edges. No, he said, the word was simple and final. It is never quiet. He pushed the glass away. He turned to face me fully. We were an arm's length apart. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space. I could see the faint weariness in the set of his mouth. He seemed on the verge of saying something else. He took a half step closer. I did not move back. His hand lifted slightly from his side, then stopped. He let it fall. He just looked at me, and the things he did not say hung in the air between us. What he was about to say before he stopped himself. I'd been wrong to ignore it this long. The echo of his voice still hummed in my throat later that night. My boots met the gritty concrete floor of the dockside warehouse. The air smelled of damp burlap and cold, stagnant water. Luca stood by a crate under a single hanging bulb. His posture was rigid. Silenzio, his main enforcer, stood beside him. A younger man with a nervous face shifted his weight from foot to foot. Luca's voice cut through the damp air. He told the young courier to repeat the drop time. The courier stammered it out. Luca's eyes were flat and dark in the poor light. He asked who else knew. That was when I saw the flicker in the courier's eyes. It was a quick glance toward the warehouse's side door. My own breath hitched in my chest. Luca saw it too. His head turned a fraction toward the door. He did not move. He told Silenzio to check the perimeter. Before Silenzio took a step, the side door burst open. 3 men rushed in. They held pistols. They were not Morty men. The one in front aimed at Luca. I froze against the wall. My heart slammed against my ribs. Luca moved faster than I thought possible. He stepped into the courier. He used the young man as a shield. A gunshot cracked loud in the space. The courier jerked. Luca let him fall. He closed the distance to the first gunman in 2 strides. He grabbed the man's wrist and twisted. I heard a bone snap. The gun clattered on the concrete. Luca drove his elbow into the man's throat. The second man fired. The bullet hit a crate near Luca's head. Wood splinters flew. Luca did not flinch. He picked up the fallen pistol. He shot the second man twice in the chest. The third man turned to run. Silenzio was there. He broke the man's neck with a sharp motion. It was over in seconds. The silence after was heavier than the gunshots. My ears rang. Luca looked down at the courier who was moaning on the floor. He asked him why he did it. The courier sobbed about money and a sister. Luca's expression did not change. He raised the pistol and shot the courier in the head. The sound was final. I felt my stomach turn. Luca handed the gun to Silenzio. He told him to clean it up and find the leak. His voice was calm and low. He said the traitor was still in the room. Then he turned. He looked right at me. For a second, his eyes were not cold. They were tired, deeply tired. He walked toward me. He put a hand on my arm. His touch was firm but not rough. He said we were leaving. He said I had seen enough for one night. Whatever came next, why his hand felt so warm on my arm after what I'd seen was the part I hadn't figured out. The cold, oily scent of the warehouse clung to my throat. I blinked against the warm, wood-paneled glow of Luca's study, my eyes still aching from the dockside dark. He stood by the fireplace, his back to me. The low fire made the amber liquid in his glass look like honey. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was low and rough. He didn't turn around. "I saw something," I said. I stayed by the door. Everyone saw something. No, I saw before. I took a step into the room. The thick rug under my feet was soft. The man on the left, your captain, he kept touching his ear. Luca turned then. His face was clean, but his shirt cuffs were still smudged with gray dock grime. He looked at me for a long time. He took a drink from his glass. "And," he said, "he wasn't on comms," I said. I pressed a fist to my sternum. He touched his ear 4 times before the trucks arrived. He was nervous. He only stopped when the shooting started. Luca put his glass down on the mantel. The crystal made a soft click on the marble. He walked toward me, his steps slow. He stopped an arm's length away. I could smell the smoke on his clothes. "Tell me his name," he said. His voice was quiet. "Petrov," I said. I didn't look away from his gray eyes. A muscle in his neck tightened. He looked down at the floor between us. He let out a slow breath. When he looked back up, his eyes were different. They weren't flat anymore. They were focused and tired and something else. "You were watching him," he said. It wasn't a question. "I was watching everything," I said. My hands were steady. I felt a strange, cold stillness. He moved closer. He didn't touch me. He just stood there, looking down at my face. The firelight caught the silver in his hair. I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. He opened his mouth as if to speak. Then he closed it. He shook his head once, a small movement. He reached out. His hand hovered just above my cheek as if hesitating. His fingers were so close I could feel the warmth of his skin. He held them there, suspended in the air between us. I didn't move. He didn't either. His eyes searched mine, and for a second he wasn't the boss. He was just a man who was tired of being alone. He dropped his hand. He took a step back. The space he left felt colder. "Go to your room, Alara," he said. His voice was gentle. It was an order anyway. My mouth still held the dry, papery taste of the fear I'd swallowed in Luca's study. I stepped out onto the balcony, and the city's humid breath enveloped me. The stone railing was cool and rough under my palms. I heard the door open behind me. Luca joined me in the silence. He placed an encrypted phone on the railing between us. The small black rectangle looked final. "This is for you," he said. His voice was low. I stared at the phone. My stomach twisted. This was not a gift. It was a leash. "For my safety and yours," he added. He looked at the city lights. They reflected in his gray eyes. The wind ruffled his dark hair. For a moment he looked tired, not dangerous. I saw the man who bandaged my hand. That memory was a warm spot in my chest. It fought against the cold fact of the phone. He picked up the phone and held it out to me. His hand was steady. I noticed a thin white scar across the back of his knuckles. It was old and faded. I took the phone. Our fingers brushed. His skin was warm. That warmth was the same as when he steadied my arm before. It felt like care, not control. But the control was still there. I put the phone in my pocket. The weight of it pulled at my jacket. "You don't have to stay," he said. He did not look at me. I knew that was a lie. Owen's face flashed in my mind. I had dragged him into this. Leaving now would not save him. It would doom us both. Staying with Luca was the only shield I had. I leaned against the railing. I chose the cage to protect my brother. "I know," I said. He turned his head toward me. He studied my face for a long time. His expression was unreadable. Then he gave a single, slow nod. It was an acknowledgement. He saw my choice for what it was. He saw the calculation and the sacrifice. Something in his own face shifted. It was a small crack. He looked away first, back to the city. The moment passed, heavy and unresolved. The cold weight of the encrypted phone still pressed against my thigh. The safe house door clicked shut behind me, sealing me inside with the sterile scent of ozone and freshly laundered linen. I went straight to the borrowed laptop on the kitchen counter. My brother Owen's face appeared on the screen a minute later, pixelated and anxious. The Tree of Life tattoo on his forearm was just visible as he shifted. He said he had found something. He had accessed shell company files from his own phone. He sounded out of breath. I told him to stop and log off. He said it was too late. His eyes kept darting to something off-screen. He said he used Luca's terminal in his apartment to get deeper access. A chill started in my chest. Staying with Luca was the only shield I had for him, and Owen was tearing it down. I said his name, a warning. He didn't listen. His voice dropped to a rushed whisper. He said the shell companies were a maze, but he traced one. It linked Sela's Croft to a front the feds had flagged for trafficking. It wasn't just about money laundering. My professional focus shattered into 1,000 sharp pieces. I told Owen to get out of the apartment right now. He opened his mouth to reply. Then his screen froze. A harsh digital screech ripped from my speakers. His frozen image dissolved into static. I called his name. The call died. I tried his number. It went straight to a dead tone, not disconnected. Gone. My hands were cold and perfectly still on the keyboard. I stood up too fast. The room tilted. I had to tell Luca. The thought hit me right away, and it made me sick. I was bringing him a problem only he could solve. I was proving my worth by showing him how my brother had broken his security. The power in the room felt like it was crushing the air right out of my lungs. He hadn't chosen me. Something else had put us here. There was a difference. I picked up the encrypted phone. My thumb hovered over the call button. I remembered his hand stopping before it touched my cheek in the study. I got it now. It was a rule. I was an asset. Assets were protected, but they weren't touched, not with any real tenderness. That was the line his honor wouldn't cross. I pressed the button. He answered on the first ring. I said, "It's Owen, they have him." There was a beat of silence on the line. Then he said, "I'm coming." The connection went dead. I was left holding the phone, listening to the empty hum of the safe house. My throat still burned with the taste of adrenaline as I raced from the apartment. The garage air was thick and cold. It smelled like damp concrete and old exhaust. I was running on pure instinct. My only thought was to get to Owen. The shadow between my car and a concrete pillar seemed to shift. A man, thick-necked and unfamiliar, stepped into the dim light. He held a pistol. It had a long black cylinder screwed onto the end. I knew what that was. My body locked. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Luca's voice cut through the silence from behind me. "You are in the wrong garage." He didn't shout. The words were flat and final. He walked past me. He placed himself between me and the gun. I saw the tight line of his shoulders under his suit jacket. The man with the silencer smiled. It was a mean little twitch of his lips. He aimed the gun at Luca's chest. "Orders are to clean up the loose end, Morty. The girl, step aside." Luca moved faster than I could process. He slapped the gun hand to the side. He drove his fist into the man's throat. A choked gurgle echoed off the low ceiling. Luca grabbed the man's wrist and twisted until something cracked. The gun clattered on the oil-stained floor. He didn't stop. He drove a knee into the man's stomach. He swept his legs out from under him. The man landed hard on his back, with Luca on top of him. I saw Luca's hand clamp over the man's mouth and nose. The man's legs kicked once, twice. Then they went still. Luca stood up. He looked down at the body. His breathing was steady. He didn't look at me. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. He wiped his hands with slow, deliberate motions. Then he turned. His face was pale, but his eyes were dark. They were focused entirely on me. He closed the distance between us in 3 quick steps. His hand came up. For a terrible second, I thought he would hit me. Instead, his fingers brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. His touch was surprisingly gentle. He said, "The girl, Croft knows your face now." He let his hand fall. "You do not leave my sight again, you understand." It was not a question. The penthouse door clicked shut behind me. It sealed out the garage and locked in the scent of Luca's leather-bound books. He moved past me without a word. He went to the cabinet where he kept his liquor. I saw the tremor in his hands as he poured 2 glasses. It was a small shake. It stopped as soon as he noticed it. He held a glass out to me. I took it. My hands needed something to hold. He didn't sit in his big chair. He leaned against the edge of his desk, facing me. The low light from the lamp cut shadows under his eyes. I thought he would talk about the dead man in the garage. He didn't. He looked at the amber liquid in his glass. He said, "Your brother's phone went dark because I told him to throw it in the river." I stopped breathing. He kept talking. His voice was low and even. "I sent 2 of my men to pull him from his apartment an hour before Croft's people arrived. They have him in a safe house, a real one." He finally looked at me. That's what I did before you called. The relief was a physical rush. It made my head feel light, but right behind it came a colder understanding. I said, "You knew Croft would move on him." Luca gave one short nod. He said, "I knew the moment you showed me that shell company file. Croft couldn't risk a loose end." I wrapped my fingers tight around the cool glass. I asked the real question. Why protect him? Luca was quiet for a long time. He looked past me at the locked door. He said, "Because I promised you he would be safe." Then his voice changed. It got quieter. "And because I might not be able to keep that promise much longer." He had never said anything like that. Luca Morty, who controlled everything, just admitted he might fail. He was close enough that I could see the faint lines of fatigue at the corners of his eyes. I could smell the sharp, clean scent of his soap mixing with the smell of old paper. We were standing in the space where a normal person might step forward. I didn't. He didn't. The silence between us was full of everything we were not saying. I knew why I was still here. It wasn't just for Owen anymore. It was because in this room, with this dangerous man, I had seen something break open, and I needed to see what was inside. The cool pressure of the penthouse door handle was still on my palm. The hallway had a single flickering light. It cast long, frantic shadows that seemed to skitter away from my feet. I was halfway to the elevator when a heavy thud hit my apartment door behind me. The sound was solid. Final. Like a judge's gavel, Luca Morty moved before I could turn. He shoved me behind the bulk of a worn couch in the hallway nook. He drew his gun in one smooth motion. His other hand pressed flat against my shoulder, keeping me down. I could hear my own breath. It was too loud in the sudden silence. Shouting echoed from the stairwell door down the hall. More footsteps pounded closer on the thin carpet. The noise was urgent. It was everywhere. Luca scanned the hallway, his eyes calculating. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward my own bedroom door. His grip was firm, not painful. I felt the cold metal of his watch against my skin. He pushed the door open and pulled me inside. He closed it quietly. He didn't lock it. He went straight to the window. I was relieved he was here, but the feeling was thin, and it was cracking. The front door of my apartment splintered open with a crash. Men flooded the living room. I heard them overturning furniture. Luca, his face set, kicked out the bedroom window screen. It clattered down into the alley below. Cold night air rushed in. He helped me onto the fire escape. The metal grill was icy under my hands. I looked back into the bedroom. The door handle began to twist. Luca followed me out, pulling the window shut behind us. He pointed down. The lower ladder section was rusted. It was stuck. Gunfire erupted inside my apartment. The sharp pops made me flinch. Luca looked at the stuck ladder. Then he looked at me. His gray eyes held no debate. "Jump with me or stay and die," he said. His voice was low and clear. He held out his hand, palm up, waiting. It was not a request. I looked at the drop to the dumpster below. Then I looked at his offered hand. I remembered what he'd said under his breath when he thought I wasn't listening, back when all this began. He had said, "I will not lose another one." I took his hand. We jumped together into the dark. I pushed it aside. Why he'd said he wouldn't lose another one? That would come back. The cold panic of the alley still seized my lungs. Each breath was a shallow, painful effort. I stood just inside the safe house door. The place smelled of lemon floor polish and stale air. It was small. Quiet. A single lamp lit the living room. Luca Morty stood by the window. He was checking the street. I walked past him to the kitchen. I leaned against the counter. I stared at the white tiles on the wall. My brother Owen was gone because of me. His world had almost killed me once. It would try again. A sob tore out of my throat before I could stop it. My shoulders shook. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes. I heard Luca move behind me. He stopped a few feet away. He didn't speak. I expected him to give an order, to make a plan. That was his way. Instead, I felt a light pressure on my back. It was his hand. He placed it there with a strange hesitation. I turned around. I didn't think. I buried my face against his chest. His shirt smelled of clean cotton and the faint, sharp scent of the city night. His body went rigid. His arms stayed stiff at his sides. I cried into the fabric. I felt like a fool and a burden. Then he took a slow, deep breath. I heard it rumble in his chest. His arms came up around me. They held me tight. It wasn't a strategic hold. It was just a person holding another person. "I know," he said. His voice was low and rough. "The weight of causing harm to the one you're meant to protect. I know that weight." He didn't say more. He didn't need to. His chin rested lightly on my hair. My crying slowed to shaky breaths. We stood like that for a long minute. His thumb moved once. A slow brush against my shoulder blade. The gesture was so small and so kind, it made my chest ache. I knew I should step back, I knew what he was. But in that silent space between us, I didn't step forward and I didn't pull away. I just let myself be held. Why I hadn't pulled away when I knew what he was, I wasn't going to like the answer. My shoulder still held the phantom pressure of his arm, a strange and heavy warmth against my skin. The safe house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, a mechanical drone in the dark. I had spread the papers across the kitchen table. My laptop screen glowed. I pushed it toward Luca Morty, the Mafia boss who was now my protector. "The police commissioner is on his payroll," I said. My eyes felt hot and dry from staring. I traced 3 shell company payments. The mayor's chief of staff is next. Luca scanned the documents. He moved slowly. His left hand rested flat on the table. He was favoring his right side where he'd been hurt. He closed the laptop with a soft click. "We can't move yet," he said. His voice was low. "It's too exposed. Croft will see us coming a mile away." "My brother is exposed," I snapped. The words were too loud in the quiet room. I searched his face, his sharp features cast in shadow. "You know something. What did your people find?" Luca looked away from me. He ran a hand over his mouth, a rare sign of stress. He paused for a long moment before he spoke. "We confirmed Owen was taken by Croft's men." His voice dropped almost to a whisper. "He's being held. He's alive. That's all I have." It was a lie. I saw it in the way his shoulders tightened. He knew more. I reached out. My fingers almost touched his arm on the table. He flinched back as if my touch would burn him. He stood up, and the moment was gone. "Trust the process, Alara." He walked to the window and looked out at the dark street, but his voice was hollow. He said he wouldn't lose another one. Now I understood. He'd lost someone before, someone he failed. That was why he held me back. He thought he'd fail again. Everything else I could deal with. Why he'd flinched when my hand almost touched him was different. The lie he told left a cold, metallic taste in my throat. I found myself in the doorway of his private study later that night, drawn by the single pool of light from his desk lamp. Luca was sitting there, his head in his hands. The leather of his chair creaked as he shifted. He didn't hear me. In the deep quiet of the penthouse, I watched the slow rise and fall of his shoulders. Someone in his world was always watching. But right then, he looked like a man completely alone. I stepped into the room. My footfall was soft on the rug. Luca's head snapped up. His gray eyes were shadowed with a fatigue I hadn't seen before. He didn't try to hide the open ledger on the desk. I saw columns of names and numbers, and notations that made my stomach turn. "You accessed the shell company files," I said. It wasn't a question. He closed the ledger. The sound was firm. "Final. It's worse than we thought." His voice was rough. He didn't look at me. He stared at his own hands resting on the closed book. A single muscle in his neck jumped. "It's not just trafficking fronts. It's people, officials, judges." He finally looked up. His expression was terrible. "Owen's name is in here, his location, his condition." I moved closer. My heart pounded hard against my ribs. I was scared. My hands felt very cold. "What condition?" Luca's silence was the answer. The bond between us registered then as a sharp ache in my chest. I understood why I hadn't pulled away when I knew what he was. It was because in moments like this, he showed me the cost. He picked up his phone. He scrolled through a contacts list I couldn't see. His movements were precise, but his fingers trembled just once. "I can get him back," he said, more to himself than to me. "But the price is the ledger. It disappears. Croft's network stays intact." He selected a name, put the phone to his ear. He met my eyes as it rang. The guilt there was a physical weight in the room. He was choosing a deal with a devil to save my brother. And he hated himself for it. But what Luca had said under his breath when he thought I wasn't listening? I still had no answer for that. The ghost of his whiskey and regret still coated my throat, thick and sour. In the quiet of my borrowed room, I traced the cold pattern of the security bars on the window with a numb finger. The door opened without a knock. Luca stood there, filling the frame. He held 2 glasses of water. His gray eyes looked tired. He stepped inside and set 1 glass on the nightstand near me. The silence between us was a heavy, living thing. "We're making progress." His voice was low. He didn't look at me when he said it. He stared at the wall above my head. His right hand, the one holding his own glass, had a fresh scrape across the knuckles. The skin was raw and pink. I hadn't seen that injury before. He saw me notice it. He turned his hand slightly as if to hide it. That small movement felt more telling than any words. "What kind of progress?" I asked. My own voice sounded flat. He took a slow drink. He looked at the water inside the glass, not at me. "The kind that keeps your brother breathing." He paused. The next words seemed to slip out. "I hate using their own filth as currency." He put the glass down hard on the dresser. Water sloshed over the rim. He looked surprised by his own outburst. He wiped the spill with his sleeve, a rough, impatient gesture. He stayed by the dresser. I stayed by the window. The space between us was only a few steps. It felt much larger. The air was cool and still. I could see the tension in the line of his shoulders. I could hear the soft sound of his breathing. I wanted to cross the room. I wanted to demand the whole truth. I didn't move. He didn't move either. We were both waiting for something the other couldn't give. He turned to face me finally. His expression was unreadable. Then he crossed the room in 3 quick strides. He stopped just in front of me. He was close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. He lifted his hand. For a terrible second, I thought he might touch my face. He didn't. His hand stopped. He let it fall to his side. Then he leaned in slowly. His lips brushed my forehead. The touch was soft and warm. It lasted only a moment. It felt like a goodbye. He pulled back. His eyes were shut tight. Then he turned and left the room without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. I knew then that Owen was already dead. That question, what he was going to tell me before he kissed my forehead, sat there like something unfinished. My lips still felt warm from Luca's kiss. It was like a ghost I couldn't shake off. I walked into the grand ballroom and the noise hit me first, a solid wall of chatter and clinking glasses. Chilled air, thick with perfume, made my throat tight. The copied ledger was a hard, flat shape against my ribs under my dress. I moved through the crowd, my eyes searching for any sign of Owen or for Croft. A waiter with a tray of champagne brushed past me, the sharp smell cutting through the floral air. And then I saw him. Silas Croft. He was over by the podium, shaking hands. He had a round, friendly face. He was smiling. He didn't look like a monster. I edged closer to the stage, where a big display board showed his charity's plans. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it. I needed to find that door to the back offices, the one I'd seen on Luca's blueprints. That's when a big guy in a black suit, one of Croft's security, looked right at me. His eyes narrowed. He lifted a hand to his cuff and spoke into it. I turned and walked fast toward the banquet tables. The sound of silverware and conversation seemed to get louder, swallowing me up. I could feel that security guy watching me. It was a heavy pressure between my shoulders. I picked up a glass of water, just to give my hands something to do. My palms were sweating. I looked at the main exit across the room. 2 more guys in similar suits were standing there. They weren't watching the door. They were scanning the crowd. I was trapped, in a room with 100 people. The guilt hit me then, a sharp cramp in my stomach. I dragged Owen into this. I had to get out. I had to get this proof out. A hand closed around my upper arm. The grip was firm. It wasn't personal. It was the first security guy. He leaned in close. His breath smelled like mint. "Miss," he said, his voice low and final, "you need to come with me." I tried to pull my arm free. His fingers just tightened. He started steering me toward a side door marked private. The crowd seemed to part without even seeing us. Croft glanced over. His cold blue eyes met mine. He gave a small, satisfied nod. I was so scared my mind went blank. My feet stumbled on the polished floor. And then the hand was gone. The security man let go with a sharp gasp. Luca Morty stood there. He had the man's wrist bent back at a brutal angle. In his other hand, held low against his leg, was a gun. He looked at me. For 1 second, his face wasn't the boss's mask. It was just a man, terrified and furious. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice rough. He pushed me back a step, putting his body between me and Croft's men. More security was closing in from the sides. Luca fired a single shot into the ceiling. The sound was a deafening crack. Plaster dust rained down. Screams erupted, and the crowd surged toward the exits in a panic. Croft was shouting orders, his friendly face twisted with rage. Luca grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the stage, away from the chaos. He was leading me to the service corridor behind the display. His hand was warm and sure around mine. We passed the podium. We passed Croft's abandoned laptop. Its screen was still on. It was a live security feed. One window showed a grim concrete room. Owen was in it, alive. His face was bruised, but his eyes were open. He was shackled to a pipe. A time stamp glowed in the corner. Current date? 3 hours ago. Luca had seen this. He knew. He had lied. I ripped my hand from his. The betrayal felt like cold water flooding my chest. I didn't say a word. I turned and ran into the fleeing crowd, clutching the ledger tight. The ghost of that security man's grip still ached on my arm. I blinked under the sterile, white lights of a windowless room. The air tasted like dust and nothing. Luca stood behind a plain metal desk. He hadn't looked at me since his enforcer brought me here. He called for someone. Captain Vito. The older man walked in with a confident stride. He stopped dead when he saw me standing against the far wall. Luca leaned against the desk. He didn't offer anyone a seat. The silence was heavy. I could hear the faint hum of the air vents. Luca started talking. No drama, just facts. He listed the times and places Vito had signaled Croft's men. Vito's face went pale under the harsh lights. His hand flew to a silver ring on a chain around his neck. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I saw the exact moment he knew this wasn't a bluff. Luca's voice stayed flat and cold. He mentioned the bank transfers, the shell company I had found. Vito's eyes darted to me. They held a sudden, raw hatred. My own hands went cold. I pressed them flat against the wall behind me. Vito finally found his voice. He shouted. He said his blood oath to the family meant more than any proof. He said Luca was betraying that oath by trusting an outsider. Luca pushed off the desk and stepped closer. He moved with a quiet threat that made my breath catch. He didn't raise his voice. He asked Vito about his son's sudden medical debt. He said the name of the private clinic. Vito's shouting died in his throat. Luca's hand came to rest on the back of the empty chair between them. His fingers tapped once on the metal. That small, controlled motion was more frightening than any shout. They stood inches apart. Luca leaned in and whispered a string of numbers, a bank code. Vito's whole body sagged. He looked at the floor. His shoulders curled inward. He mumbled a name I didn't recognize. Luca nodded once. A short, sharp movement, then he turned his head and looked at me. His gray eyes weren't tired now. They were clear and hard, like river stone. In that look, I saw the answer to my unasked question. This was what he was going to tell me before he kissed my forehead. This was the cost of his protection. This was the world, and he would show it to me without flinching. I put it away. I got on with things, but the name Vito had mumbled. It refused to stay put. The coppery scent of the blood lingered in my nose, a phantom taste I couldn't swallow away. The limousine's leather seat was cool against my back as we turned toward the museum. The dark glass between us and the driver made the space feel sealed. I watched the city lights streak by my window. I knew I should be preparing for the gala. I knew I should be steeling myself. I could only think about my brother. I turned from the window to look at Luca Morti. The Mafia boss sat across from me. His suit was perfect. Where was he taken from? I asked. My voice sounded flat in the quiet car. The last place you knew he was. Luca didn't answer right away. He looked at his own hands. They rested on his knees. He flexed them once. Then he let them go still. The report was detailed, he said. His voice was low. They took him from a parking garage, 3 blocks from his office. They used a van with false plates. He gave me the address. He gave me the time. It was all so precise. This wasn't a guess. He had known for days. Hot pressure built behind my eyes. You had this, I said. I shifted on the seat to face him. The leather creaked. You had all of this. You looked me in the face, and you said you didn't know his condition. You said we had to wait. He met my look. His gray eyes were clear. He didn't look away. I did know. He was alive. He is alive. Croft has him. He said it plain. There was no comfort in the truth. It was just a fact. I withheld the report. I thought I could control the situation better if you didn't know. The word control sat between us. It was heavy and ugly. The cash, the gun, the scars, none of it was normal. This was the heart of it. He had the information. He chose to keep it. My safety was his reason. His control was the real one. I understood the difference now. I didn't know what to do with the understanding. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a thin, folded paper file. He held it out to me. It was the physical report on Owen's abduction. His hand was steady. His offer was not. I stared at the file. I didn't take it. He didn't pull it back. His arm stayed extended across the space between us. The limousine slowed for a turn. The file did not waver. I could see the faint typing through the paper. I could see the official stamp. This was the proof. This was the thing he had kept from me. I made myself reach out. My fingers brushed his as I took it. The touch was brief. It was not an accident. It was an acknowledgement. I held the file in my lap. I did not open it. We were close enough now that I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. He was waiting. I was holding my breath. The car stopped. We had arrived. The file's sharp corner pressed a phantom ache into my palm. I'd clenched it the whole ride. Across the gala's glittering ballroom, a wave of frigid air from a vent raised goosebumps on my arms. Silas Croft, the host, pointed a manicured finger right at me from the podium. "That woman," he announced to the room. "She is a thief who tried to sabotage this charity." He spread his arms wide. The picture of wounded generosity. The crowd's attention swung toward me like a single entity. I felt the weight of their judgment, a tangible pressure in the quiet room. Luca moved his hand to my arm. His grip was firm, a silent order to stay still. I stepped forward anyway, pulling free. My heels clicked on the marble floor. I held up my phone. My voice was clear over the hum of the air conditioning. "He's lying." I looked at Croft, then back to the crowd. "The real theft is the one he commits every day." I turned to a technician near the stage. "Put this on the main screen." The large screen behind Croft flickered to life. I scrolled through the decrypted ledger entries. I named the shell companies from my research. I listed the officials on the ledger, their account numbers next to huge deposits. A rustle moved through the crowd. A shift from curiosity to anger. Croft's watery blue eyes went from me to Luca. His friendly face crumpled into pure hate. He nodded sharply at a bodyguard near the door. The crowd's murmur became a loud roar of accusation. People stood up, pointing at Croft. In that chaos, Luca's hand found my elbow again, not to restrain, but to guide. He leaned close. His voice was a low rumble I felt more than heard. "It's done. My men have him." He didn't say Owen's name. He didn't need to. The slight pause before he spoke, the way his eyes stayed fixed on the exit, it told me everything about what that extraction had cost. Whatever came next, that cost was the part I hadn't figured out. The phantom pressure of Luca's hand on my elbow lingered as he guided me toward the grand staircase. The ballroom was chaos. Chandeliers blazed over abandoned plates and spilled drinks. The noise was a solid wall of shouts and scraping chairs. Then I saw them, two of Croft's guards, big guys in dark suits, shoving through the panicked crowd. They were heading straight for the media terminal. I grabbed Owen's arm. His face was pale, his lip was bleeding. I pulled us both behind a wide concrete pillar just as the guards passed. Luca moved like a shadow detaching from the wall. He tackled the first guard to the floor. The second guard saw us and lunged. I kicked a heavy metal chair into his path. The legs screeched across the floor. The guard stumbled. I pushed Owen toward the terminal. "Now." His hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped the backup drive. He fumbled it into the terminal's port. A progress bar flashed onto the giant screen above us. Silas Croft screamed from across the room. "Stop them! Kill the upload!" Luca had the second guard pinned now. He looked over his shoulder at the screen. The bar climbed, 70% 80. His gray eyes found mine across the chaos. There was a raw relief in them, a clean break in the storm. My hand had brushed his on purpose before all this, a silent promise. This was why. The bar hit 100. The screen populated with names, dates, accounts. A collective gasp ripped through the crowd. Then police sirens cut through the noise from the street below, loud and close. The win was over. I moved toward the door. What he'd said under his breath when he thought I wasn't listening moved with me. My ears still rang from the shouting. I pressed my back against the cold steel of a walk-in freezer door in a cramped pantry. The sharp smell of lemon cleaner cut through the adrenaline. Luca leaned against a metal shelving unit across from me. He tipped his head back against the cardboard and closed his eyes. The only sound was our breathing, loud and uneven in the small, dark space. I looked at his hands. They rested on his thighs, palms down. They were not still. A fine tremor ran through his fingers. I had never seen him shake before. I pushed off the door and took one step toward him. I reached out slowly and placed my hand over his. His skin was cool. The shaking stopped the moment I made contact. His eyes stayed closed. His voice was low and rough when he spoke. It sounded scraped raw. "When the security closed in on the terminal," he said, he stopped and swallowed hard. "All I could think was that I led you right to them. I was so scared I would get you killed." He set it to the dark ceiling. His fingers turned under mine and tightened, holding my hand there. We were close then. I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. He looked down at me. His other hand started to lift from his leg as if to reach for my face. I saw the intention in the shift of his shoulder. Then his arm went slack. He let his hand fall back to his side. He took a shaky breath and stepped back. The space between us felt cold. He broke the contact, but he didn't let go of my hand. He just held it, suspended between us, like a question he was too afraid to ask. I entered the antechamber. The distant orchestra from the ballroom was just a muted, golden murmur here. Silas Croft was on his knees in the center of the room. Two of Luca's men held him there. Luca stood over him, his shoulders rigid. Silas lifted his head. His expensive suit jacket was torn at the shoulder. "You think this ends with me?" Silas said. His voice was rough but loud. "My men are sworn by blood. They will burn your world down for this." He tilted his head and spat on the polished floor. The wet spot landed near Luca's shoe. Luca didn't move. He looked down at Silas for a long moment. I saw the muscle in his neck tighten. Then he crouched slowly, bringing his eyes level with his enemy S. The move looked painful. He pulled a phone from his pocket and turned the screen towards Silas. "Your oath holders just watched you sell them out," Luca said. His tone was flat. "The leak is public. The news has the ledger. They have the names of the officials you paid." He tilted the phone. "They are already disavowing you. Your blood oath is to a ghost." Silas's smirk vanished. His eyes darted over the screen. I saw the exact moment he understood. His face went slack. Real fear flashed in his eyes. He looked broken. He stopped struggling. His shoulders slumped. He just stared at the wet spot on the floor he had made. Luca stood up. He winced as he straightened his leg. He looked from Silas to me, then back. His expression was unreadable. "The territory is mine now," he said, "but the cops are coming. I can hear their sirens. I can't just kill you." He said this last part like it was a problem to solve. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it disheveled. It was the only unplanned thing I'd ever seen him do. I watched him. I didn't know what to do with that. He was making himself a king in front of me. The sirens were getting louder. That cold triumph in my veins was still humming, but one thing kept pulling at me. What would he do now that he couldn't just kill Silas? I stepped into the server room. The air was sterile and cold, with the faint, sharp smell of overheated electronics. Owen was slumped against a terminal, clutching his side. On the screen, a green progress bar was frozen at 78%. Luca's men, Silenzio and another enforcer, were already dragging a heavy server rack toward the metal door. The sound of it scraping across the tile set my teeth on edge. "The connection dropped," Owen said. His voice was thin with pain. "I think their IT team hit a remote kill switch." Luca was already moving. He didn't look at Owen's injury or my worried face. His focus was absolute. He pulled a small black drive from his inner pocket. "The backup," he said, more to himself than to us. He knelt by the main server tower. His fingers were swift and sure as he popped a panel. I watched his hands work. There was a precise, almost surgical care to his movements. A single drop of blood, not his own, had dried on the back of his right hand. The sight of it made my chest ache. "The port is here," he said. He plugged the drive in with a soft click. The server lights flickered, then a new sequence of amber LEDs began to pulse. "Owen, make it work." Owen pushed himself upright, wincing as he typed. A new dialog box opened. "It's reading the drive," he confirmed. "Transfer initiating, but it's going to take a few minutes." From beyond the heavy door, we heard the first solid thud of a shoulder against metal, then another. Silenzio braced his back against the server rack, his feet sliding on the polished floor. Luca stood. He looked from the pulsing amber lights to the shuddering door, then to me. His gray eyes held mine. In them I saw no plea, no softness. Only a stark and terrible calculation. He knew what he was asking. He knew the cost. "Hold the door," he said to his men. His voice was a low command that brooked no argument. Then, to me, he gave a different order. "Get Owen to the secondary vent shaft. It leads to the parking garage." He pointed to a grated panel low on the far wall. It was not a suggestion. It was the only path left, and he was forcing me to take it. The rest made sense. Why he hadn't ordered me to run with him didn't. The ghost of Luca's grip still ached in my forearm, a deep imprint from the server room. I found myself braced against the balcony's cold stone railing, tasting the first metallic hint of dawn in the wet air. The shouting from the hotel was a muffled echo now. Luca stood beside me, his shoulder almost touching mine. He was quiet for a long time, looking out at the ruined gardens below. I could see the muscles in his back working under his torn shirt. He was holding himself very still, like a man waiting for a verdict. He shifted his weight, and I saw his hand. It was resting flat on the stone. The edge of his palm was pressed down so hard the skin was white. His fingers were trembling. It was a tiny, constant tremor. I had never seen any part of him shake before, not in anger, not in pain. He saw me looking and made a fist, but it was too late. The crack was there. I knew then that something was broken in a way I did not understand. "I gave the order 3 days ago," he said. His voice was low and rough. "To dissolve the family holdings, to release every man from his oath." He wasn't looking at me. He was watching a car speed away through the gate. "I did it before I knew we would win tonight. I needed it to be clean." He paused, then finished, the words seeming to surprise even him. "No one left to come for you later." We were so close I could feel the heat from his arm. My hand was curled on the railing, inches from his. I did not move. He did not move. The space between our hands was a silent question. Love didn't change what he was. It only made leaving harder. I thought of Owen, safe now because of this man's violence. I thought of the ledger, the evidence, the world burning because of another man's greed. My reason for staying was right there in that narrow, empty space. It was not fear. It was the terrible understanding that his ashes were now mine to carry, too. That narrow, empty space between my hand and his. I'd been wrong to ignore it this long. The cold weight of the key he'd pressed into my palm was still pressing against my thigh from inside my pocket. At the edge of the gravel drive, the first light of dawn turned the manicured hedges into a silhouette of ragged black lace. Lucas stood a few feet away, his gray eyes fixed on the scene down the drive. The morning air smelled of damp earth and cut grass. 2 of his men, the ones who had stayed, were putting Sila's Croft into the back of a police car. The rival boss was shouting, his threats muffled by the closed door. I saw his mouth moving behind the glass, his round face twisted. Luca did not look at him.